Destiny of a Savior by Famous Fault. Chapter 20. On the Way. Raphael had at last started to understand. Until that point, he had not really understood how parents could become so tired, feel so old, become so incredibly fatigued by taking care of a baby. He had found that they complained too much, now that he had taken care of the child himself. Perhaps part of that had been due to the fact that he did not constantly worry. Certainly, he did his best to make his apartment as safe as possible, but he also accepted the fact that at times, Joe would hurt himself or get ill. It was something unavoidable, and accepting that and simply taking care of it when it occurred removed a lot of stress. Raphael's natural patience was a contributing factor in not stressing out. However, know that Joe had started developing separation anxiety, things were slightly different. There wasn't a moment of the day that Joe could stand being away from Raphael. This was the one craving that was crucial for Raphael to fulfill at all times. Seeing as Joe had been neglected for 6 months before a Tam picked him up, a psychologist working for social services had informed him of the possible consequences. It was already established that Joe's physical health was poor. He had been submitted to many dangerous substances in the place he had been before, and it was quite frankly a wonder he had survived his first 6 months at all. Lung failure, extensive brain damage, or physical development problems could have all arisen. That none had was nothing short of a miracle. He was, however, quite sensitive against bacteria, his immune system dented already. Then there was the possibility of him developing psychological problems. Raphael had never held for possible that children younger than 3 could develop depression. Apparently they could. It was a thought that alarmed Raphael gravely, and he did his very best to make up for the neglect Joe had been submitted to. Sometimes Mokoba came to visit. At first, it had been obvious that he had not been pleased with Raphael's answers, and he had left in a rather bad mood. When he came to visit a second time, announced this time, none of that could be noticed. They did not touch the subject again. Mokoba stood out a lot in Raphael's circle of, friends. Mokoba was a lot less patient and a lot less accepting of the situation. He was constantly on edge, praying for something to happen. He never stopped asking questions about the wizarding world, and Raphael answered them as good as he could. The subject of Amelda also arose once or twice. Even that subject was soon dropped. Mokoba was not as easy to be with as Yugi, Rebecca, Tracy, or Professor Hawkins had ever been. The odd thing was that in normal social terms, Mokoba was far more developed than any of Raphael's other friends. Perhaps that was why their communication was so troublesome. When on the first day of May, Mokoba showed up unannounced on Raphael's doorstep again, he already knew what Mokoba was going to say.
"You're leaving, aren't you?"
Mokoba nodded. "Yes, she came to get me. She says it is time to go. I was supposed to wait for her outside town. It does not matter where, as long as no one is around." Raphael sighed.
"I see. Be careful."
"The blue eyes white dragon. The dragon and the girl have some sort of connection. I do not understand it, though. It's odd. Just as odd as my brother's fascination with the dragon. I think it is connected. I wonder what she wants." Raphael's eyes narrowed.
"Mokoba, I'm not telling you to be careful because I'm trying to scare you. The beasts from the Dominion and the Shadows will do whatever they need to destroy the Shadows. It is true that Hem has some sort of control over them, but they are still able to act on their own. I suggest you refrain from putting too much trust in the dragon."
Mokoba looked taken aback for a little while. Raphael opened the door further. Perhaps the words that had to be spoken were not to be heard by outsiders. Mokoba realized that, too, and took a single step inside as the tall man closed the door behind him. "What did they tell you?" Mokoba asked. "This whole affair with Rebecca and Yugi and everything? You knew she was going to die. What was so important that you allowed it to happen?" Mokoba had seen Raphael with Joe. It seemed impossible to believe that Raphael would let anyone under his protection die.
"If you tell this to anyone else, I'll gut you like a fish, understood?"
Raphael said, proving how remarkable his social skills were. Mokoba hoped for Joe's sake that he and Joe's teachers would get along. The raven-haired boy simply nodded.
"The Shadows are being destroyed as we speak."
Raphael said. "What?" Mokoba asked, shocked. "How could that be?"
"I can't tell you. I don't know. Truth is, nobody knows. The shadow creatures are disappearing at a very, very slow rate. They themselves don't even know how it is possible.
Raphael explained, or more accurately, he made it even more complicated. Mokuba looked like a question mark. What does that have to do with Rebecca's death?
Yugi and Atem were hell-bent on revenge. It was of importance that they could let go of that emotion, as it is one that strengthens the shadows. I don't know how, but Rebecca's death contributed to that. In addition,
Raphael fell silent, not quite sure how to put it correctly.
In history, there have always been people who are different, who affect the course of this world. There are people who did this on material levels, like your brother. There are also people who affect it in different ways. Harry Potter, Darts, and Atem are all examples of that.
Mokuba sat silent, did still not understand. Raphael stopped talking and walked over to a cupboard. In there he kept all his duel monster cards. It was quite a pile, and it took him some time to locate the particular card he was looking for.
Pegasus made a mistake when he created this card. He underestimated the strength of the actual Ka. Are you familiar with it?
Mokuba took the card. Yes, the unhappy girl. One of the most human monsters around. What is special about it?
All the people I just mentioned, they are different in a very active way. They change things. The person to who this Ka belonged was passive. She did not change anything. She was, however, quite different. She was omniscient.
Omniscient? Mokuba repeated skeptically.
Yes, it is not something either of us can comprehend. That high level of awareness made that her Ka and she herself were identical. There is no difference between the two of them. She was the one who told me to let Rebecca die. She said that Rebecca would be of more use to the larger picture, dead than alive.
Raphael sighed.
She already knows what is going to happen. She also knows what will happen if she changes the course of things. She knows everything. She already knows how this is going to end.
She knows how you can destroy the shadows, Mokuba added. Raphael nodded.
Yes, and apparently Rebecca's death is one of the things required.
But how? Mokuba asked. So on basis of the words of a creature you just told me not to trust, you allowed Rebecca to die? Doesn't that seem a little drastic? Raphael shook his head.
Mokuba, I worked for Darts. I have a far better insight in the destructive powers of the shadows than you have. That they are destroyed is more important than the life of one single human being.
It was not just a person you allowed to die, it was Rebecca. I hardly knew the girl, but you were supposed to take care of her. Don't you feel guilty? Raphael was remarkably close to hitting Mokuba. Yes, he felt guilty more than anything. The youngster had no right at all to doubt that. Mokuba noticed Raphael's anger at the question and took a step back. I'm sorry, Mokuba said quickly.
Armies have given their lives in order to have the shadows destroyed, and after a time locked them away, entire families of Tomb Keepers have been wiped out in order to protect the secrets of the Millennium items.
Raphael told Mokuba.
The beasts of the dimension and the shadow creatures will do whatever they need to destroy them. So should we. It does not mean that we should not be careful around them.
Mokuba nodded. He did not fully understand the gravity of the situation. The shadows had been around the past years too, but he had never noticed anything. To him, they did not really seem dangerous. Then he stood up to leave, ready for his rendezvous with a dragon his brother had taken lives for. There was no means of steering. The dragon could not see where it was going, and Harry knew that if it turned sharply or rolled in midair, they would find it impossible to cling onto its broad back. Nevertheless, as they climbed higher and higher, London unfurling below them like a gray and green map, Harry's overwhelming feeling was of gratitude for an escape that had seemed impossible. Crouching low over the beast's neck, he clung tight to its metallic scales, and the cool breeze was soothing on his burned and blistered skin. The dragon's wings beating the air like the sails of a windmill. Behind him, whether from delight or fear, he could not tell, Ron kept swearing at the top of his voice, and Hermione seemed to be sobbing. After 5 minutes or so, Harry lost some of his immediate dread that the dragon was going to throw them off, for it seemed intent on nothing but getting as far away from its underground prison as possible. But the question of how and when they were to dismount remained rather frightening. He had no idea how long dragons could fly without landing, nor how this particular dragon, which could barely see, would locate a good place to put down. He glanced around constantly, imagining that he could feel his seat prickling. How long would it be before Voldemort knew that they had broken into the Lestrange's vault? How soon would the goblins of Gringotts notify Bellatrix? How quickly would they realize what had been taken, and then, when they discovered that the golden cup was missing, Voldemort would know at last that they were hunting Horcruxes. The dragon seemed to crave cooler and fresher air. It climbed steadily until they were flying through wisps of chilly cloud, and Harry could no longer make out the little colored dots, which were cars pouring in and out of the capital. On and on they flew, over countryside parceled out in patches of green and brown, over roads and rivers winding through the landscape like strips of matte and glossy ribbon. "What do you reckon he's looking for?" Ron yelled as they flew further and further north. "No idea," Harry bellowed back. His hands were numb with cold, but he did not dare attempt to shift his grip. He had been wondering for some time what they would do if they saw the coast sail beneath them, if the dragon headed for open sea. He was cold and numb, not to mention desperately hungry and thirsty, when he wondered had the beast itself last eaten. Surely it would need sustenance before long. And what if at that point it realized it had 3 highly edible humans sitting on its back? The sun slipped lower in the sky, which was turning indigo, and still the dragon flew, cities and towns gliding out of sight beneath them, its enormous shadow sliding over the earth like a giant dark cloud. Every part of Harry ached with the effort of holding on to the dragon's back. Then the very thing he had feared happened. The dragon was flying over the Atlantic, and with yells of horror from all 3 of them, they realized that they now were in a remarkable tight spot. Looking behind him, he could still see the British Isle, but it was shrinking at a rapid pace. "Harry!" Hermione yelled. "What do we do now?" "No idea," Harry yelled back. "You're the brilliant one." I'd say fancy a lift, but that sounds far too British for me," a voice to the right said. "So, wanna catch a ride?" Hermione, Ron, and Harry all gawked at the sight to the right. Next to them flew a white dragon with incredibly blue eyes. On the white dragon was a boy with long, untidy black hair. He was grinning at them. He seemed not to be worried about flying above the sea. The boy stopped smiling when he saw their shocked expressions. "It was her idea," he shouted over the sound of the wings from the dragons and motioned towards the white dragon. "I had no idea where we were going." "Who are you?" Harry shouted back, trying to do some sort of attempt to aim his wand at the stranger, but since that almost made him lose his balance, he lowered it again and held on to the dragon. Hermione had more luck and was aiming it at the man's chest. "Mokaba-kaiba!" the boy answered. It didn't really say Harry anything, but from the sound he heard Hermione make, you could tell that she knew who the man was. Mokaba also noticed the recognition. "Come on!" he said, and reached out a hand. Hermione took it, and for a breathtaking moment she was hanging in midair before landing, rather clumsily, behind Mokaba. "Hurry!" Mokaba told the other 2 as they hesitated. "She is not as strong as that dragon!" The white dragon almost seemed to understand Mokaba and roared in protest. The man ignored the dragon. Hermione helped Ron and Harry over too, and the white dragon, who was smaller, turned back to the coast at once. She was fighting to keep the weight of all 4 of them in the air, but she was quickly losing height. Looking behind himself, Harry could see that the broader dragon was still flying towards sea. "Hurry," Ron said silently to make sure Mokaba would not hear. "This dragon does not exist." "What do you mean?" Harry asked, confused. "I know nearly all sorts of dragons do, Charlie. There is no solar dragon who looks even remotely like this," Ron whispered, his alarm evident in his face. "If this kind of dragon exists, it is the only one of its kind." Harry felt himself shudder. Just their luck. Here they were, flying above the Atlantic on a dragon that did not exist, with a man that Hermione seemed to know. Not to mention, the dragon was losing height at a quick rate, Harry swore under his breath. Mokaba was saying words of encouragement. "Come on, you can make it! Just a little more, we were almost to shore. I know you can do it!" The dragon, oddly enough, seemed actually to be encouraged by those words, and continued to fight against the weight of the 4 humans. When they were a meter or so from the coast, the dragon gave up and crashed into the sand of the secluded beach, the water above knee-high. "Thanks," Mokaba said, before letting himself slide down the side of the dragon. Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed suit. Ron took the opportunity to look at the dragon a little closer. "Hermione," Ron whispered, "who is he?" "Mokaba Kaiba, Seto Kaiba's little brother. Don't you remember what Dean told us? Mokaba Kaiba is one of the 3 survivors from when the tomb collapsed." "A survivor from Lucius Malfoy's killing spree," Harry corrected dryly. "Yes," Hermione said, disturbed as she waded towards dry land, followed closely by Harry and Ron. So, this is yet another one of Professor Muto's friends? Ron said, not sounding very happy. He looked back at the dragon that had not yet moved. And I'll take it that is one of these creatures the Pharaoh has a say over? Yes, I take it she is, Hermione said, recalling mystical elf who had healed them all 2 years ago in the Ministry of Magic, and all the other creatures who had aided them in the battle. So you are wizards? Mokuba asked, when they at last all were standing on dry ground. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged a glance. How did you know? Harry asked at last. Raphael told me, Mokuba said, and received 3 blank stares. Rebecca's caretaker, he explained. The blank stares dissolved. Then I take it you are one of Professor Muto's friends? Hermione asked. Mokuba smiled and put 2 hands behind his head and looked at the sky. Nah, not really. According to their definition of friendship, it is true that I turned to them when I needed help, but, oh well. If you'd asked Yugi, he'd probably say I was, or he would have a decent amount of years ago. Then what are you doing here? Ron asked, somewhat insensitive. It was her idea. My brother really liked her, though I never knew why. And a little less than a year ago, she told me I was needed. So, here I am. I've been wanting to find Yugi for a while now. He's just not easy to find. Probably for the best, ain't it? Ron muttered under his breath to Harry. Mokuba, however, heard it. How so? Ron said, not quite sure what he should answer. Because he's wanted, Hermione said, seeing no point in hiding that. There is a price on his head. Mokuba grimaced and said something in a language Harry did not understand. Then he sat and walked back into the water, leaving the 3 there to discuss without him overhearing. He tended to the white dragon while talking to her softly. Harry looked at the others. It was the first time that he had seen them properly since escaping from the vault. Both had angry red burns all over their faces and arms, and their clothing was singed away in places. They were wincing as they dabbed essence of dittany onto their many injuries. Hermione handed Harry the bottle, then pulled out 3 bottles of pumpkin juice she had brought from Shell Cottage and clean, dry robes for all of them. They changed and then gulped it down the juice. With low voices, they discussed what to do now. Breaking into Gringotts would certainly make for great consequences. Voldemort was bound to find out. Not to mention, they did not even know how to destroy the cup yet. And then there was Mokuba. Harry, although grateful for him saving their lives, just wanted him to go home. He had clearly no experience with the wizarding world and was following orders from a dragon. A dragon that, according to Ron, did not even exist. It did not seem like the best fundamentals to enter a battle on. And they did not know if he could be trusted. The next thing Harry knew, he was lying on his back, his mind headfirst into Voldemort's. For a moment, he thought about the thing that Professor Muto had told him about, how dangerous it was to leave one's body, but a second later the thought was shattered by Voldemort's horrible rage. When Harry came to, he saw 3 pairs of eyes staring down on him. Judging by their worried looks, and by the continued pounding of his car, his sudden excursion into Voldemort's mind had not passed unnoticed. He struggled up, shivering, vaguely surprised that he was still wet to his skin, and saw the cup lying innocently in the grass before him, and the sea, deep green, shot with gold in the falling sun. The dragon had gotten to its feet, and dragged itself out of the water. They had really exhausted it. Harry felt almost guilty, but more pressing matters were on his mind. He, however, hesitated to speak then, looking at Mokuba, who would hear whatever word he said. When Mokuba realized that, a second later, he looked somewhat disappointed, but walked away to stand next to the dragon again, out of earshot. He knows. His own voice sounded strange and low after Voldemort's high screams. He knows, and he's going to check where the others are. And the last one, he was already on his feet, is at Hogwarts. I knew it! I knew it! What? Ron was gaping at him. Hermione sat up looking worried. What did you see? How do you know? I saw him find out about the cup. I was in his head. Harry remembered the killings. He's seriously angry and scared, too. He can't understand how he knew. And now he's going to check the others are safe. The ring first. He thinks the Hogwarts one is safest because Snape's there. Because it'll be so hard not to be seen getting it. I think he'll check that one last. But he could still be there within hours. Did you see where in Hogwarts it is? Ron asked, now scrambling to his feet too. No, he was concentrating on warning Snape. He didn't think about exactly where it is. Wait! Wait! Hermione cried as Ron caught up to the Horcrux and Harry pulled out the invisibility cloak again. We can't just go. We haven't got a plan. We need to get going, Harry said firmly. He had been hoping to sleep, looking forward to getting into the new tent, but that was impossible now. Can you imagine what he's going to do once he realizes the ring and the locket are gone? What if he moves the Hogwarts Horcrux, decides it isn't safe enough? But how are we going to get in? We'll go to Hogsmeade, Harry said, and try to work something out once we see what the protections around the school's like. Get under the cloak, Hermione. I want to stick together this time. But we don't really fit. It'll be dark. No one's going to notice our feet. Hermione walked forward and took her place between Ron and Harry. Harry pulled the cloak down as far as it would go. Muggle was watching interested, as the only thing he still saw of the three were pairs of feet. Together they turned on the spot into the crushing darkness. Mokba turned to the Blue Eyes. Do you know where they are going? The creature nodded with its large white head. Can we get there? The white dragon nodded again. Time to go then. Are you certain this is going to work? Rio asked and looked rather doubtful. Let's hope so, Yugi said, and he heard Adem's silent agreement in the back of his head. Without wasting another second, the two switched places. Adem threw Rio one single glance and nodded to assure the albino that they'd be fine. Then the puzzle started to glow softly, and nearly invisible shadows started to crawl around like slowly lifting fog. They had recovered after the near-traumatic event of being used to transport a killing curse to their wielder, who luckily had recovered. Atem frowned and reported to Rio.
This place is surrounded by a wide variety of spells. One single step into that barrier and we will be unable to get out, and they will know we are here.
So, this is a dead end? Rio asked, and looked at the shadow creature who had led the way to Hogsmeade. The ancient king had asked Plague Wolf to take them to a place through which they could get to Hogwarts unnoticed. To make sure that the creature did not disappear, like all the rest of the creatures who he had sent to Hogwarts, it had not left their side a single time, and traveled at their speed, although leading the way.
No, Atem said. It's not that hard to get past these curses.
Rio looked at him with an expression that mixed surprise and skepticism. Atem just smiled when he saw his friend's doubtful expression. I didn't know you could lift spells, Rio said. Atem juggled.
I can't, but they won't detect us at all, even if we pass.
The shadows withdrew, the snow unaffected by their presence.
This might be somewhat unpleasant,
he warned before the shadows embraced them. It swirled around them, coming closer and closer until it was a thin layer covering them from head to toe. Without a second thought, Atem stepped across the border. Nothing happened. How much does this protect us? Rio asked, following more hesitant.
Not much. We can be seen, and if you are hit by a killing curse, you will die. This is merely to deceive detection spells.
The Pharaoh looked at Rio, then pointed to the ground, where their footprints were visible in the snow.
So please be careful.
Rio nodded and came to walk a little closer to Atem, following in his exact footsteps as much as he could. They stayed close to the walls as Plague Wolf led the way. The creature was clever enough not to use the main road, but used dark alleyways to get them to their destination. Then someone started to scream. Rio was sure that he almost got a heart attack from surprise, and when the screaming did not stop, he looked at them. The ancient spirit had not reacted as heavily on the sudden screaming, but he was undeniably tense.
It's the detection spell. Someone triggered it.
From the main road, they heard someone shout, Not under your wrapper, then, butter! Spread now! Easier! Atem and Rio exchanged a look. This was not good news. Let's have a look. The albino and the spirit wasted no time and returned with their own tracks. They hid behind a low wall and could from there see the Death Eaters search the street. Where are they? Rio whispered.
No idea.
Atem whispered back. He could not let the shadows search for them either. The dark energy would be noticed now that the Death Eaters were searching the street. The Death Eaters seemed to have no luck, though. What about the Dementors? A Death Eater yelled. Let them have free rein. They'll find them quick enough. The Dark Lord wants Potter dead by no hands but his. And the Dementors won't kill him. The Dark Lord wants Potter's life, not his soul. It'll be easier to kill if he's been kissed first. Atem hissed angrily as the cold started to spread around him. He heard Rio breathe in a ragged breath. The Dementors were gliding into the street. Atem was not quite sure where they came from, but there were a lot of them. What are they? Rio said, choking. Atem had not realized how much a Dementor would affect Rio. He was not affected at all, being a darker creature than the Dementors. Rio, however, suffered the full effect, and with a past as his, he would be a feast to the cloaked figures. Like he had expected, every Dementor turned towards them, not to Harry and his friends. Atem realized that he had to act before one of the three summoned a Patronus. If the Dementors weren't going to give the other three away, they could just as well take advantage of that. He did, however, have to be quick.
Get Harry, Ron, and Hermione out of here safely, he ordered Plague Wolf, preferably wherever they choose to go.
The wolf growled lowly and understanding and dashed off, not noticed by any of the Death Eaters. Rio was getting more and more trouble breathing, and was even paler than usual. He looked close to shock.
Stay here,
Atem said, kneeling next to his friend.
It'll be over soon.
Rio only nodded, his eyes still wide with horror. The spirit of the ancient king wasted no more time and simply walked up the main road. The Dementors, upon catching sight of him, scattered like scared doves. It took the Death Eaters only a second longer to notice him. In the dark, it was, however, hard for them to recognize him. "Who are you?" the one who had acted as their leader asked.
Atem chuckled darkly.
He had expected that the mere reaction of the Dementors would give him away. Apparently not. "We will kill you!" a Death Eater yelled, his voice giving away his discomfort. "With Potter at Hogwarts, this war will end! You can't do anything!" Atem smiled.
There is not a single pupil at Hogwarts who will go down without fighting. You of all people should know that. If you plan on ending this war tonight, you will have to prepare for a violent battle.
"Lumus Maximus!" the lead Death Eater said, and lighted the area. They all gasped as they recognized the short figure. "We will kill whoever resists. We are prepared for a heavy battle," a different Death Eater said, being the first to gather himself.
More so than you realize.
From nearly every door in the street, more Death Eaters emerged. "Tonight Potter will die and all resistance will end."
Looks like the first battle of the evening will be concluded here,
Atem said, his crimson eyes flaring dangerously. "Yes, the first one to die tonight will be you, Muto," the brave but undeniably foolish Death Eater said. Most of the others still had not recovered from the overall fear his presence awoke in any wizard and witch. Even the Death Eaters feared possession. Voldemort's followers looked around, but to their disappointment noticed that the Dementors had fled the scene the moment they had realized what they were dealing with. Atem was sure he saw one or two Death Eaters return inside when they realized who he was. His mere reputation was enough to make them fearful. He wondered how they would react on the full impact of the shadows. Atem flashed a smile.
Allow me to introduce myself,
he said.
My name is not Yugi Moto.
The Death Eaters started to move uncomfortable. They all had their wands raised, aimed at him. Atem bowed, playing even more on the fears of the Death Eaters as he said,
My name is Pharaoh Atem.
It took the Death Eaters almost 2 seconds to realize what he had just said. Pharaoh? One of them repeated, stuttering. This was news to them. Yes, they had all known about the spirit-possessing Professor Yugi Moto, but in their world, a spirit was nothing less but a nameless being of unmatched cruelty. "Just kill him!" the leader yelled once again. Only 2 or 3 had the courage to fire the killing curse at him. Mirror Wall arose, just like it had in the Ministry of Magic. When it vanished again, one Death Eater had been hit with one of his fellow's curses. He was not dead, but certainly out of game.
This battle,
Atem said with a smile as Curse of Dragon and Summoned Skull appeared next to him,
will not last long.